I've been running some numbers recently just for the business kind of behind the scenes stuff. I just want to make sure that the services and products that we provide are being profitable and also working out how much the revenue is and expenses. And one of the first things that I was looking into is the firing surface. So if you're making pottery, you have to have a kiln because without firing your work, it's just going to stay as clay forever. It's not going to be functional. It's not going to be waterproof. But to have a kiln at home, it's really difficult because it's expensive. You need a dedicated space for it. And if you have your own kiln, you have to build a lot of work just to justify firing a full kiln. You don't want to have the kiln mostly empty because then you're wasting electricity, you're wasting all the power that you put into it. So a firing surface like we offer here, it's really good for hobbyists because then you can just pay by the kilos. You don't have to worry about maintenance. You don't have to worry about the upfront costs and anything like that. Just bring your work in, drop it off, have it fired, glaze it, drop it off again, and then that's done. I was curious to see how much money we actually make per firing, and based on the records that we have, which is really good to have because we track all our orders, so we know exactly how much, how many kilos each order is, how much we charge for it, what type of firing, so I can break it down into how many percentage is bisque and stoneware. Just fun fact, 51% is bisque, and then I think about 35-40% is stoneware oxidation, and then the rest is a mix of earthenware, mid-fire, and stoneware reduction. So the bread and butter or the bulk of it, it's always bisque because obviously you have to bisque your ware before any glaze firing, no matter what clay it is. So it makes a lot of sense that it's about half of the total firing. So based on the calculation of total revenue divided by numbers of firing, our average firing revenue is about $170, and I think that sounds about right, but that doesn't include full kiln hire. So I think if you include full kiln hire as well, it will push it up a little bit more, but not enough to really skew the data one way or the other. So with the revenue in mind, we just need to work out the expenses and then subtract that. That will give us our net profit. So one of the first costs, and one of the main costs, I guess, is the electricity that's being used to do a firing. So this is kind of specific to the electric kilns. Again, the gas kiln is a whole different thing, but then we don't fire that often, so I think we can just lump it all together and just calculate together. So with the power, with one of our kiln, the rotor, the controller tells you how much power it's used from the previous firing. So based on the stoneware firing recently, which is probably the one that requires the most power, it used 103 kilowatts. And we've got two different electricity rate here. We've got an off-peak and an on-peak. So off-peak is from 9 p.m. till 9 a.m. and then on-peak is the opposite of that. The rate is quite different. So with on-peak, it's 38 cents per kilowatt, and then for off-peak, it's 23 cents per kilowatt, I think. Which means the cost of the power is about $25 for off-peak and about $38 for on-peak. So we always fire our kilns, we schedule them to start a little bit later in the day so that most of the firing will land in the off-peak hours. So most likely we have it finished at 9 a.m. because the end of the firing, it's usually the most power intensive because the higher the temperature, the more power is required to keep heating up the kiln. The major cost is actually going to be labor instead of power. So I think we can schedule, or we can estimate about half an hour for loading and half an hour for unloading the kiln. On average, I think an hour total time is reasonable. This will also include times where we spend maintaining the kiln, like grinding the kiln shells. If there's glaze that's been dripped onto it, we have to clean that off before we do the firing, or else it'll just keep eating into the shelves. Also, just vacuuming it, cleaning it, and changing elements doesn't take that long, and you only do that once every couple of years, so that's fine. On average, about an hour of labor, which comes to about $35 or so. And then the last thing to consider is kind of wear and tear of the elements, because that's kind of a pricey item to replace. There's other stuff that needs to be replaced every now and then, but elements is the main thing. Things like thermocouple shouldn't, unless someone knocked it and broke it, they don't fail that frequently. They can probably last many, many, many years, especially if you get something nice like a S-type or R-type. A K-type will fail pretty quick. But one of the nicer ones will basically last a really long time. So elements are a little bit expensive. The one that we used before, we got a genuine, like kind of first party elements, and it was about $1,650. But we are gonna probably try a different supply at some point where we can knock that price down quite a fair bit, I think. But I'm gonna calculate based on about 200 firings, even though with with the kiln that we replaced the element recently, I think we got up to about 300 firings, but I like to be a bit more conservative with our kind of calculations. So underestimate my revenue and overestimate my expenses. And if that still looks good, I know that worst case scenario, we're still making money. And then, on average, it's going to be better than that. So that gives us a bit of breathing room. So with the elements, 1650 divided by 200, that gives us about $8.25, which means the total expense is $67.75. So our revenue before was about $170. I actually think it's closer to 200, but again, I'm just being more conservative with that calculation. Which means our net profit is about $102.25. I kind of expected that number to be higher, but I don't think it's that bad. So we do quite a bit of firing anyway, and you have to look at the firing surface as more than just a product in the lineup. Like I said before, you can't do ceramics without a kiln, so we have to have kilns anyway. If we don't do a firing surface, we're probably going to be losing money on most of our firing because there's also a lot of fixed costs to consider. So the purchase of the kiln, that they're not cheap. They can be anywhere from a few $1,000s for a small kiln to $20,000, $30,000 for a bigger kiln. So having a firing surface also means that we can get our work done faster because with our members, they will put the work through the firing surface and then we tend to fire the kiln when there's enough work to fill the full kiln. If we are only firing for members, then that's going to take a lot longer, which means people are waiting longer for their work. With the firing service to general public, we've got a lot more work coming through, so the kilns are always firing, which means the works are always flowing, so people don't have to wait as long, which is great. And from a marketing point of view, the firing service is great as well because it brings a lot of general public people into the studio where they might not visit us otherwise. Based on the numbers that we have, I'm happy where we're at with the kiln firing. It means that our price is probably priced correctly. We're not too expensive or not too cheap because we're still kind of in line with the industry standards. So it's really good to know numbers like this. And I enjoy the business side of things, and that's kind of why I run the business. When we first started business, I couldn't find any information on, topics related to this, kind of the numbers behind the studio, trying to work out, how much we have to charge to be profitable and things like that. So I thought I'll put a video out there that relates to this stuff. I like doing the behind the scenes stuff, and I think some of you might be interested in, how a studio works and the behind the scenes version of it. So if you've got any questions that you're curious about, if there's something about the studio that you want to know about, how we do things, why we do things, and if you might run the studio yourself and you're just curious about what other people do, I'm more than happy to answer a lot of these questions. So leave a comment below, just let me know what you're interested in, and then we can make some videos about it in the future. So thanks for watching.